I'm Megan DeFord.
And I'm Richard Talafera.
We're both coaches, and we're teaming up to have the kind of conversations we have with our clients. The sometimes messy, always meaningful, what now questions we all face.
In each episode, we'll take on a question or challenge about work, purpose, and all the spaces in between.
Think of it like the show Frasier, but with less neuroses and more real-world coaching.
So let's dive in.
Can I confess something to you?
Okay.
I love this sweater. And it's Men's Express from a Lost and Found.
That is fantastic. I
I love it. And every time I wear it, I'm like, it's like wearing a secret. So it was like office cleanup day. And we had this rule that like, if something was in the Lost and Found for like over a year, you could just like take it and no one wanted it. Sweater.
Oh, that's amazing. And it looks so cozy. It looks really cozy.
And I'm like, oh, it's my secret sweater.
Okay.
Richard, I'm here to tell you something difficult.
Okay.
No.
I'm here for it.
No.
No. Just no. Just
no.
Simply no.
No. So today we are talking about no. Oh my gosh. What a simple word that translates in so many languages and evokes a lot of feelings and thoughts. So I think it's a great topic for us to explore today, and our relationships with no and how we help our clients through the word no. I'm curious, like, how do you feel when you hear the word no, or does it depend on the context?
It really depends on the context. I mean, if, you offer them a sandwich, like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But if your job says no, that is a completely different ballgame. And it brings up, like you said, thoughts and feelings and emotions that you have to wrestle with. And these no's can be very debilitating at times. When we get a no, especially it can be in a job, it can be in a relationship, it can be a friendship. It's like hitting a brick wall. And so what do you do and how do you react? How do you respond when you get that no? And I think that is really part of the equation with no is we're all human. We're all going to get no from someone at some point. How are we going to respond to that no is really dependent on the context, but that response will say so much about us.
So many times, I think no does feel like a brick wall, especially if you're not expecting it, or especially if it's for something that maybe it's a possibility, but you really wanted it. And the more personal it is, I think the harder it gets. So like you said, whether it's with a job, and that could be a layoff, not getting a promotion, maybe just an idea that you were excited about doesn't go through. It could be a relationship. It could be any kind of personal conversation. And in the professional realm, one of the best supervisors I ever had, Tim Tormon, he had this saying, and it was strategic yes, thoughtful no. And one of the things that I think was so useful about that and relates to the brick wall aspect of this conversation is it made you think through the possibility of yes and also the possibility of no and all the different ways that could move from there. So I'm curious, when you're working with clients, especially who are navigating a transition in their career, whether that's a pivot, finding a new career, finding a new job within their industry, how do you work with them in terms of hearing no? Because I can imagine, especially with a layoff, that's a big blow, right? That's ultimately, if we think about it, that's the ultimate no. So your ego's a little bit damaged, but you got to get back up, right?
Right.
You got to keep going. So how do you work with your clients on that?
I mean, is it the ultimate no? Yes. And it's not a final no. And I think, especially if you've been in a career, been in industry for decades, and that in that industry, in that career has shaped so much of who you are. When you get that big no of a layoff, then it's like, oh my God, a part of feel like a part of you has been rejected completely. And one of the things I tell my clients is that you did your career, but you're not necessarily of your career. And meaning that when see a decent number of journalists, and I tell them that you have to separate the fact that you do journalism from you are a journalist. We attach so much of the meaning of our lives through the careers that we do that when that career goes away, a good part of us goes with it.
Mhm.
And it's like having multiple sources of meaning beyond just where you get your paycheck, I think is crucial. And being able to spread yourself, I wouldn't say spread yourself thin, but spread your meaning out a little
Mhm.
bit more
Mhm.
so that when that big no comes, you acknowledge the pain, you acknowledge the hurt, and you can still see some daylight ahead for you. And and being able to take steps forward towards that daylight is so important.
Yeah. And when you are navigating a job transition, whether it's on your own terms or a little if you're pushed a little bit to do it, um,
Mhm,
getting rejected can feel very personal, right? So you have to go out there, you have to apply to jobs, you have to reach out
mhm.
to networks, you have to create
Yes.
networks. So
Yes.
how do you guide people through that when it can feel personal and especially after a job loss,
Mhm.
that potential of and ultimate inevitability of you're going to be told no again, and that's okay.
There's a great Japanese proverb that says, "Fall down 7 times, get up 8."
Mm,
As long as you can get up, you can give yourself a chance.
mhm,
So and one other thing to do is don't make the mistake that I made when I was laid off from the Journal. The next day, I remember going out for a walk and like, "Oh my god, what am I gonna do? What's the shape of my life gonna take?" Then the day after that, I went for a hike and went, "Okay, I'm gonna be a coach. Got all this stuff. I got all these certifications, everything, and boom, I'm gonna be a coach." What I didn't do, what I should have done is take a couple steps back and give myself a week to breathe
mhm,
and giving myself the time to grieve that no.
mhm,
And having spent so much time in one place, you get so attached to it. Did I give myself to get up at that eighth time? Yes, but I should have given myself a little bit more time as well. So I think one of the things I try to tell people when I coach them is don't always look to hit a 5-run home run
mhm,
immediately because there's this urgency where you got bills to pay, mortgages to pay, kids to put through school, food to put on the table. And there's that urgency that, yes, I need money coming in to pay all of these things. And at the same time, that can lead to overextending yourself, blasting out applications and not hearing anything back and not reaching out to people, sort of sheltering yourself. So the thing, to remember is small steps can mean just as much as those big steps.
mhm,
Those base hits are just as meaningful. If you can put the ball in play, using the sports analogy, you're going to give yourself a chance to advance. Take small steps, reach out to a couple of friends, make your moves. Yes, they're going to seem small, but they're going to be meaningful and they're be a stepping stone to where you want to go.
yeah, and I think the idea of yes, get knocked down, get back up 100%, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But that idea of creating structures and systems around you while you do that is really important. And I
Mhm.
think the more personal it feels to you, regardless of what that no is and what that feeling is. So in this case, it's a job loss, but maybe it's someone you were really interested in and they were like, you know what, I don't see this relationship moving forward. Maybe you went out on like 3 dates, but it feels like a lot to you, right? So whatever it is for you,
Mhm.
not bypassing the feelings and
Oh, yeah.
don't let those feelings dictate extremes. Small wins every day are
Every day.
so important. And I know we've talked about this before, but clarity doesn't come before action. And many times with a no, when you're not expecting a no, that clarity isn't there. So you do have to take action, and just small action is that's all you need. You don't have to do, like you said, giant swings.
And getting recentered as well.
Yes.
If you've been knocked off your axis,
Yeah.
the world feels wobbly. The first thing you should do is find stable ground
Mhm.
in some way, shape, or form.
It's really important to explore those pathways, and sometimes a no is just a final no. But most times in life,
Mm,
it's not actually final. You may have some additional steps, you may need to think about things differently, you may have to go about things differently, but like you said, get on steady ground, know your options. It never
mm,
hurts to ask some questions after a no, and then I
right,
think understand when to accept the no, because the no is gonna get you to yes faster. And so
right.
what I mean about that, and I'll use the philanthropy example, is, Richard, if I come to you and I'm like, I have a scholarship for kids who love dinosaurs to study paleontology at my organization, right? And it's $5,000 a kid. It provides a year worth of education. It also provides food. We provide breakfast and lunch for them and transportation costs. Like that's an amazing impact, right? Awesome. I
Absolutely.
just made that up, by the way.
Okay.
If you tell me no, I'm not going to keep trying to convince you. You've said no. So what I'm going to do is say thank you for your time and move on to someone else who has that interest,
Mhm.
right? I'm not going to waste
Yes.
my time or your time.
Right.
This is not a rejection of me personally. It's not a rejection of the organization and the work it's doing. It's
Mhm.
just a misalignment. That's it.
That's it.
Eh, the other thing that I see a lot in clients that I work with, and women in particular, is they feel bad about saying no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't
It's
think it's unique to
disappointing.
women, but I do think, at least in the work that I've seen, women are trying to figure out some sort of negotiation, right? They're trying to figure out how this can work for everybody, which is a
Mhm.
wonderful skill to have, except when you really need to just say no.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I have that notion of not wanting to disappoint people
Mm,
with the no that I give them. I'm yeah, I want to be of help and of service to people.
mhm.
But sometimes, like you just said, there's a misalignment there, and that yes isn't going to work out here. And so maybe it takes practice. Like, how do you work with your clients in a situation like that where they don't want to disappoint the person that's in front of them?
Yeah, so I think it depends on context, but let's assume that this is a clear no, and they just don't wanna disappoint whoever they're working with, and it's interesting because sometimes it's people that they don't have a relationship with. So, the question that I usually start with is, if you don't say no, what are you giving up?
Okay.
Right? Like, so that strategic yes, thoughtful no, what are you giving up? By saying no, what are you gaining? What are you making space for?
Right.
And you don't have to justify it. I also say this all the time, and I learned this a long time ago. No is a complete sentence. Y
Bingo.
you do not have to give more explanation. It does not
Mhm,
matter.
mhm.
Um, no is a complete sentence, and if people push you on it, that's their deal. It is not your responsibility to keep giving responses.
Absolutely, absolutely right. I mean,
Yeah.
I find that, you know, when I am interacting with people, or there are people trying to sell me their services that I'm not interested in,
Mhm.
and I say, I think I'm saying no. I think I'm saying a complete and clear no, but then they push past that stop sign,
Right.
and it really, really annoys me.
Well, they're
And
trained to.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's right. They're
Yeah.
trained to continue the conversation, but then with me, a boundary has been crossed when I've said
Yeah.
clearly no, and say, okay, I'm just not going to respond to them anymore.
Yeah.
Again, it's about, for me, it's about energy. Do I want to continue to put my energy into this conversation?
Right.
That's not going to do me any good whatsoever.
Or them.
Yeah.
You're not
Yeah.
gonna buy their product, like, and it's
Yeah.
interesting because, especially in sales, you are taught to keep pushing and try and get to that root of why they're saying no. But you also need to understand, in this case, especially, like, there is no additional reason for no. If someone's sort of waffling on it, okay, maybe I don't know. But the
Mhm.
other piece that I will say, I mean, I'll hang up on people. If they keep going, I'll just hang up because I'm like, well,
Mhm.
I said no and the conversation's done.
Yeah.
And that's probably not very nice, but whatever. So anyway,
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
is a complete sentence.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those exercises that the more you do it, it's gonna feel weird at first.
Oh,
No.
absolutely. Oh,
And then
yeah.
silence,
Mhm.
silence.
Mhm.
And don't go back on it. Don't over explain because ultimately what you are doing in that, at least from my perspective, is you are making an assumption of how you're being perceived. And that assumption of perception is that you're you're not being nice, you're a problem, you're
Mhm.
being uncooperative,
Mhm.
all of these
Mhm.
things that we're taught not to be. That's your perception of them perceiving you. You are
Yes.
not responsible for their perception of you.
Completely right.
And so
Completely
it
right.
gets you really have to practice that no and stop talking.
It takes a lot of practice, especially if you're one of these people, if you're one of these people who doesn't want to disappoint anybody. But
Mhm.
at the same time, you make the practice, you do the practice, and you start recognizing patterns. And so I think a real key point to be paying attention to what these conversations are saying,
Mhm.
and it are these conversations aligned with your values, or and that is use that as a clear signal to say, okay, we're done with this conversation. We're
Right.
out. So your values can be a guidepost for you to say no.
Yeah.
And it can help you make that no easier for you to say.
Yeah.
Or
And when you're not living your values and you're not in line with your values, to what end? That's another question that I love. To what end? When you are aligned with your values, you are living your values, you feel confident in your values, it allows you to receive a no and to give a no a lot easier than when you're unsure of it. And I think in this conversation as well, we're sort of talking about no in two different things. So I want to kind of reel back and maybe let's think about it from the perspective of when you receive a no.
yeah.
One of the things that I also find with my clients, and I find it with myself as well, is I often will not do a thing because I'm expecting a no.
Yeah.
And so
Oh yeah.
ultimately, and I wrote this down, like one of the questions I also ask people is like, what I asked you at the beginning, how do you feel when you receive a no? But what really is more important is how do you feel at the thought of being told no,
Yeah. And
right?
that and just that thought can prevent us from taking action.
Right.
And we can use that as sort of procrastination.
Mhm.
I know this person is going to tell me no. So why even bother?
Mhm.
But again, let's approach that with some curiosity.
Yes.
What if the person said no? How would I respond to it? Heck, what if the person said yes?
Yeah.
Maybe you're shocked and surprised. And maybe there's also part of you that's going, gee, I almost said no to this opportunity.
Mhm.
What would that have cost me
Right.
if I hadn't brought enough curiosity and enough bravery
Yes.
and enough courage to ask the question?
Yeah.
And even if I got a no, then okay. Again, dipping into curiosity. What caused this person to say no? And approaching it as data. You're getting data from that person. You're getting information from that person about a particular situation that you can use down the road.
Yeah.
We tend to use procrastination to not have these difficult conversations. Sometimes these are very difficult conversations. And at the same time, in these conversations, we have to bring a level of bravery and courage to them
Mhm.
and curiosity as well. It's like, okay, I'm going into a situation, I have to ask a question. I might get a no. Okay. All right. Trying to prepare for it the best way I can.
Right.
And let's then just ask the question and see what happens.
Mhm.
And they, and just thought of this. Maybe this is a weird thought. Even if it's a difficult situation, bring a level of play to it. Not every situation is going to be like this, that, but let's make it a game.
Yeah.
See what
Yeah.
happens.
Well, and I think it's about, to your point, rewarding the action
Yeah.
versus giving power to a potential outcome.
Yes.
And so for yourself, I love the idea of dipping into your values and curiosity and bravery and courage and loving yourself enough,
Yeah. Absolutely right.
cheering yourself on enough that it's like, hey, whatever happens, I need to see what happens. I might get a no, but I might get a yes. I might get a maybe. I'm going to get an answer. And ultimately, that's what I need from this, right?
Mhm.
Because whatever the answer is, it's getting you closer to the end goal. But it's
Sure.
ultimately about having self trust that you can handle whatever is going to come at you
Mhm.
and that you believe in yourself.
Yeah.
And this other person's potential no, or this other entity's potential no, doesn't necessarily, it's, I always laugh to myself when I start getting into procrastination, which ultimately is about all of this that we're talking about. And I'm like, you're not gonna die. Like I joined Threads. I joined Threads this weekend. I had put it off for no real reason, but I was like, yeah, I should be on there, whatever. And and one of the things that I'm working on, Richard, is speed. Stop over analyzing things and making it perfect because then I never do it, right? So
Mhm.
I was like, just put it out there. I
Yep.
misspelled on the first thread. I had like an autocorrect. And I was like, you know what? This is perfect. I'm proud of myself. I set it up. I did it. I
Mhm.
got it out there. It wasn't perfect. I'm not perfect. It's fine. Fuck.
Great. Yeah.
And I
And
almost deleted it. And I was like, don't delete it. It's fine. Right. So, how does this
Mhm.
relate to no? Well, I think how it relates to no is that things aren't going to be perfect. That's not the
Right.
goal. The
Mhm.
journey is the goal. And on the
Mhm.
journey, you're going to have yeses, you're going to have nos, you're going to have a lot of question marks. And you can handle it and you will grow on that
Mhm.
journey. So for people that were like, "Oh my god, Megan," when I'm like, "You have to love yourself," which you do have to
Do.
love
Yeah.
yourself. But if you're like, "Okay, this isn't my jam, whatever." In business school, there's a principle called BANTA, and it's the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And that's ultimately what they're teaching you is like understand all your options and understand when no is the best option and walking
Right.
away is the best option.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, you may have thought I got into woo territory, but I just saved you some time on your MBA, right? Like, no is just an option in all
Thank you.
things. Yeah.
Thank you. But
You're welcome. You're welcome.
going back to your example of the first Threads post you sent out
Yeah.
and you let it go and you just put it up there. That is taking imperfect action.
Mhm.
We want to make, we want to wait until the conditions are just right
Yeah.
before we do anything. And it doesn't work out that way. Saying yes to yourself and taking that imperfect action can mean so much. I know we're sort of getting off
No,
path.
I think this actually ties in nicely, and I was just thinking, like, we should continue this if you're good with it and maybe split it into 2 different, like, tied together episodes, because
Sure.
ultimately, no is very easy to say, right? When you're looking at it from a perspective of perfection. So I do wanna
Mhm.
follow that thread,
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
imperfect action,
Yeah.
but thinking about thinking about receiving no and detaching your self-worth from that this is just a piece of data.
Mhm.
It's the same thing as you giving the no. And if you struggle with giving no's, detach yourself from that a little bit. In the sense of you are not responsible for that other person's reaction to your no. Right. And
Right.
it's not something that you can't explore with that other person. It doesn't mean you're cruel about it. I'm not saying that
Mhm.
at all. But if you understand that no is the right decision for you, you have to honor and respect that in yourself, even when it is difficult. Right. But the more comfortable I have gotten with saying no, the easier it has become. And the more my life has opened up. And many times I was saying yes to things that I did have capacity for. I could do it, but
Mhm.
was it the right thing to say yes to? It was not a strategic yes,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Right.
And and so just as much as we have to apply strategic yes, we have to apply strategic no. There was a time in my life not too long ago where I couldn't have done that because I tied so much of my self-worth to that productivity
Mhm.
or how other people perceived me or how useful I was in situations. And I think when we can detach ourselves from that a little bit and understand that our worth is not tied to those external things and that judgment, look, you're gonna get judged anyway, so you might as well, like,
Yeah,
again,
roll the dice. Just roll the
roll the
dice.
dice, don't cause harm, I'm not saying that, but look, be true to yourself, and like you said, be rooted in
S
your values.
Yeah.
And
And so much of that, what you just said, is about the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves.
yep,
And 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 we give ourselves so much stress about how people are going to react to our no that we just we become a ball of stress
yes,
about the situation that might end up being, let's say, not a big deal, but not as big of a deal as we were thinking it was.
yeah,
And again, going back to procrastination, that can slow us down from taking decisions that will take a weight off of our shoulder
yes,
and will actually help us out. I think some of the no's that we worry about are come from, we don't want to be perceived as being selfish.
mm,
And don't we want to be a team player. We want to be a part of the community. When we want to help people out. When we say yes to everything,
mhm,
you know, you start pouring from a cup that becomes more and more empty.
mhm,
And we're not giving our friends, our fellow coaches, our coworkers, our loved ones, significant others, the best of ourselves.
correct. Yeah,
We can't run at 100% all the time.
right. What are
And
we making space for in
yeah.
saying no? What are we
Mhm.
saying making space for in saying yes? And I think the other piece of that too is this idea of control, like,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
and this is an easy example that I think everybody can understand. By me saying no, it allowed someone else to step up. When there's a void, people will step into it.
Absolutely.
So if you are so worried that if you don't do it, the system's gonna collapse, I've got news for you. Any
Mhm.
system that collapses because one person steps away isn't a real system.
Yep.
And I try and get away from corporate speak a little bit, but we are the CEOs of our own life.
100%. Absolutely.
And
It
as such, we have to make those decisions, right?
Yeah. And we are more resilient than we give ourselves credit.
Yes.
And we act as though sometimes our no's are going to somehow excommunicate us from the tribe.
Mhm.
And maybe there's some sort of very old programming in our
Oh,
brain
for
that
sure. For
yeah,
sure. So I'm gonna pause us here. I want us to
okay,
continue the conversation, but
yeah,
I'm gonna pause us here
okay.
and let's continue this in a part 2 sort of supplement because I think procrastination and what you just said of like, you've been voted off the island are
Mhm.
very real and tie into no.
Yes.
So for people who have listened to this conversation, my main takeaways would be depersonalize the no. No is just data.
Mhm.
That's all it is,
That's
right?
all it is. Yeah. And and take imperfect action.
Yep.
Don't let the no, hold you back.
Yes. If you are feeling uncomfortable with giving a no, dig into that a little bit.
Yeah.
What is saying no making space for? What is
Mhm.
yes making space for? And no is a complete sentence.
Never
Practice
forget
it.
that. Yeah.
Feel good about it.
Right.
Feel
Yeah.
good about it.
It can be your best friend. You never
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think the follow-up to this very naturally for our next episode is let's talk about this imperfect action, procrastination, safety, because that's a big part of
That's
this.
big.
And I want to dig into that judgment a little bit more.
Mhm.
So, first part of no is how are you feeling about it? And then let's go into the next steps of no.
All right. Love the sound of it.
Awesome. Richard, thank
But
you so much. This was a great conversation.
I really enjoyed it, and I know people are gonna get a lot out of this.